question.
Is there a question there?
Yes, I have a question.
Please.
Sometimes I feel like I'm losing my faith towards the art. So therefore I'm losing my faith towards humanity. Towards humanity. So,
yeah.
But you're here in front of me, and you're still producing art, and you're playful and exciting. So I was wondering, what is the drive behind this?
What is the drive behind it? Oh boy, what is the sound of one hand clapping?
I'll tell you.
Oh. That's cheating. I don't know how to give you an answer that is up to your question.
Maybe you can describe an experience that you realize that this is what I have to do for the rest of my life. You know? Like, what was that moment that you said, I cannot go back? The art is my future, or this is what I do.
Well, I don't know about the drive, but the condition in which these things occur is openness. So to find a piece of a broken tape measure on the ground, there's just something that kind of clicks on, and I take it home and I don't know what I'm going to do with it, and then I say, oh, well, I'll just mount it on a block of wood so that it looks important, and then I give it a name. Actually, when I called it failure to measure up, I was thinking, yeah, I was not thinking about that. I was thinking about how many times as I was growing up, I was not understood and I was thought to be just a failure. And so it was a self-portrait for me, but I didn't want to lay that on other people. I just wanted them to have their own sense of it. Does that help at all? Is that any kind of an answer?
It's your answer. Yeah.
So this is silent question period.
Why did you change your name?
There was a big disagreement in my family about something that I had done, and it was not done. It was not done in a way of hurting anybody, but it was taken as doing something against the family, and my family is quite large, and they take the fact of being a family very seriously. And so we had this disagreement, and it never really resolved. And I said, well, damn it, I'm not going to keep that name. And I found that actually I was working as a hospice volunteer, and I had a client who was supposed to die in 3 weeks, and instead he got well and went home. And I don't take credit for that. So then he wasn't feeling very well, and he got interested in genealogy. And his name and my name appeared on the same page. Forbes and Foster appeared on the same page of one of his books. He Xeroxed it and sent it to me. And it was a little paragraph about the history of the name Forbes. And it gave three different versions of the name Forbes. One was Forbush, one was Fordyce, and one was Ffarrabas with 2 F's. I said, that's it. I think it's Welsh, and my people came from Scotland, and they came through Wales, so it makes perfect sense. When you say Forbes, in Scotland you say Ffarrabas, and that's not very different from Ffarrabas. So I think it's Welsh. Then I had to think of a first name that I thought would go well with that, and I was thinking for quite a while because I realized that my mother was very old and she never would understand if I changed my name. So I waited until she departed at the age of 97, and I waited for a while. And then I was reading a history of some islands off of Cape Cod in Massachusetts. And in the colonial times when the British, it was the Revolutionary War going on, and the British came and sailed into the harbor of this island and came ashore and told the farmer there, it was on an island, and he had livestock, which was his living. They said, we're taking your livestock to feed the troops. He said, no, you're not. And he chased them off the island. And then he jumped in a rowboat and he rowed, I think it was 7 or 8 miles with a strong current to the mainland and raised the militia who went after the British. So I said, now there's real spunk. I said, I like that. And his last name was Nye. John Nye was his name. And I said, okay, and that goes with Ffarrabas really nicely. So that's how I chose that name. Well, the Scandinavians got to the British Isles big time. Longer boats are coming to win us. Hold on to the shore. They'll be taking the key from the door. That's a Cat Stevens song. Yeah.
What is Fluxus to you?
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for not asking how to define fluxus. But if you had asked, I would have quoted Emmett Williams, who was a very early flux master. And he said, if you can define it, it isn't. What does it mean to me? It means an opening of doors and windows to let thoughts out that I never thought anybody would be interested in. And it's, certainly there's humor in it, but it isn't all just humor. And what is just humor anyway? Help me, Bob. It certainly was companionship. There were all of these people with nutty ideas that could talk to each other. It was wonderful.
I think John Cage is the origin, the fluxist. John, with the
John Cage.
his lectures at the Social School of Research.
Yeah. Well, certainly that was where the first nexus was.
I think so.
That people came. He was doing a class on mushrooms, and he would take people out on foraging trips to find mushrooms in the woods and so forth, and they would all start talking about these ideas. And yeah, those were the very first Flux people.
I think so, yeah, because Yoko was there too, and Dick Higgins was there.
Dick Higgins was there, and I think Emmett Williams.
Emmett
and,
Williams.
Yeah.
In fact, yeah.
I'm not sure that Yoko was
Yes,
part
no,
of that
George.
first mushroom kind of thing, but
But it was all about, well, in fact, the whole thing about humor and the philosophy about East meets West.
yeah, there was a lot of Zen and Tao
Yeah,
in it, but not formally, just,
not formally, no.
you know, it was in our minds.
Just to be free with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very freeing. And it was wonderful to see a concert in Town Hall, which is it's a very special concert venue in New York City. And one performer came out. It was a series of different people doing different things. One performer came out with a French horn with his hand in the bell and his other hand on the keys. And he strode into the middle of the stage and tipped up the horn, and it was full of marbles, and they went all over the floor. And that was the music. It was the marbles falling on the floor.
And then
It's not just humor, it's also surprise.
well, another thing that Cage told them was, you can just write down an idea and treat it as a music piece. I mean,
Yeah.
you can play it,
Yeah,
you know, and just make a score.
right. Dick Higgins did one called 1,000 Symphonies, and he had 1,000 big sheets of music paper, and he put them up. He had to get a state trooper from the police with a machine gun. And I forget whether Dick was actually allowed to hold the machine gun or whether the trooper had to do it. But they went out to a sand pit where it wouldn't hurt anybody, and there was a wall of sand behind, and set up the 1,000 sheets of paper, and shot right through. So that did the notation on them. I think some people may have tried to play it, actually.
There is a CD.
Say what?
There is a CD with a recording of this.
Uh-huh, okay. Yeah.
I have two questions. The first one is, have you ever felt tired or annoying that people call you Fluxism artist?
No, not annoyed. Sometimes I feel like I'm part of Fluxus, and sometimes I don't. But I don't know any particular mark of demarcation. There's no line in between yes or no. It's a continuum. And sometimes it's annoying if people really want to pin you down and to know where you belong in history and things like that. But I've been so out of history for so many years, as I call it, on the back burner of the stove, that it's really very nice to be included. And I love Fluxus. It's open-ended and it's ongoing. George Machunas is dead, and many of the early Fluxus artists are gone. But you know, it's an idea. It's floating out there somewhere.
Another question is quite personal, because you had a Fluxism marriage and Fluxism divorce, and do you think you're a Fluxism mother? I mean, I'm really
Well-
curious about what is your child life.
It wasn't a Fluxus marriage. That was George Machunas and Billy Hutching. But we did a Flux divorce. And that was our 10th wedding anniversary, Jeff's and mine. But as to the children, they just thought anybody might go and wash diapers in Central Park, you know. It's just things that people did. But then one time they had the idea of all of Jeff and I had 2 kids, and Peter Moore and Barbara Moore had 2 kids, and John Hendricks had 2 kids, and Jackson McLowe and Iris Lezak had 2, as it happens. And they decided that they would get together and talk about what it was like to be Flux kids. And all the parents had to go away so they could really be free to talk.
And a lot of them are still together, like really, really close, even after all these years. They're still very connected, very connected.
Yeah, when we went, Adam and Cy drove me down to New York from Vermont to go to Jeff's memorial service, or not service, but his memorial. And I would say all of those kids were there, and it was just so wonderful to see them seeing each other and being greeted by them. And Allison Knowles and Dick Higgins, his 2
And
daughters.
the triplets. Tell them about the triplets.
Oh, right. So Allison and Dick had twin daughters 3 weeks after my daughter Tyche was born. Tyche means luck. And she was a goddess of chance, luck, and fortune in ancient Greece. And so they were not identical twins, they were fraternal twins, and they didn't look very much alike. And Tyche and Hannah and Jesse would go skipping down the street holding hands, and everybody thought they were triplets because Tyche looked more like Hannah and more like Jesse than they looked like each other. So it was kind of like triplets, and we lived fairly close together, so they played together a lot. Yeah.
Hi. I'm curious, what's your relation to Dutch Fluxus artists?
I know some of the names. I don't know the Dutch or the German work so well. I know more the French, Ben Vautier and Robert Filiou, and some of the Japanese artists like Mieko Shiomi and, of course, Yoko. Toshi Ichiyanagi, who was Yoko's first husband. He was a composer, but he was kind of close to the group. I know the name Thomas Schippers, if I can say it right, and Willem de Ritter, but I don't know their work.
Okay.
I would like to know more.
Yeah, and, because there's this artist, there was this artist Stanley Brown, which was who kept himself also in anonymity by not having any interviews or having work in catalogs, but you also keep yourself a bit in anonymity.
I do what?
Anonymity?
Well, it just kind of happened.
Not on purpose?
I wasn't. Pardon? I didn't choose to be anonymous. It's partly being a female artist and having less coverage, and it's partly that when Jeff and I split, he stayed in New York and was much more connected, and I moved first to Cambridge, Massachusetts, near Boston, and then to Vermont. Actually, I was moving closer. When I moved to Vermont, I was moving closer to Jeff's mother and his sister, whom I loved very much. And I wanted to be near them, but I didn't want to be in their backyard. So I moved to a different town, but close. And then there were other things to do, like renovate a house and get a job and stuff like that. And so I was not... Every now and then Jeff would send me a letter about people that he knew that I knew that he had seen and what they were doing. And I think part of it was boasting, ha ha, we're doing it and you're not. But part of it was really wanting to share news that would interest me. But it was a long time of pretty much isolation, like 45, 50 years. And I didn't think that I would live to have something like this happening again. And here it is, and I'm thrilled and very honored.
Since it happened, have you reconnected with those people by any chance? Since it happened, have you reconnected with those people by any chance?
I'm sorry.
You didn't hear me? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Since it happened, like since you got recognition, did you reconnect with those people that you've mentioned before, or do you still not know? Or do you still feel that isolation that you feel now?
Well, they've dissipated to all different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And a good many of them have died.
Oh, wow.
But some people I just feel very still connected to, like Allison Knowles, partly because our daughters were close friends, but also because we were.
Yeah.
Jackson McLough has died, and he was very special to me. His wife, they parted, but his wife, when I knew them, she's still alive, and she came to Jeff's memorial, and we had a wonderful, a chance to connect. Something that people say in my family is we always seem to meet at weddings and funerals.
Yeah.
There's over 20 or 25 people who wanted to write for the book. The whole first part of the book is many people sharing anecdotes and ideas in the book. The book is almost a Festschrift at the beginning.
Yeah, this is the book that Adam put together for my 50th, what's the word? Retrospective show in 2014. Yeah, that's right. Ta-da!
It was a wonderful experience working with her on it. Basically, every spare moment for about 3.5 months was spent on that. It was just a delight. Imagine going through someone's life experiences and condensing, synthesizing it all. And she wanted it to be short, so we condensed it to 112 pages. It's pretty packed, but it was just such a wonderful experience going through the attic of her experience and all the rooms and figuring out what to put. And Nye is an amazing editor herself. And it was just great process working on things. The way she does her poetry, she takes great care in the font and the place of the way the lines move. It was very interesting. I found it fascinating working with her.
Do you know about lice eggs? They're called nits. Mm-hmm. And somebody who is very, always pulling them out of their hair is called a nitpicker. Pardon? Yeah, exactly. And so I can be a nitpicker about typographical errors. And
no, but it's a delightful process because she's just a great editor of her own work. It was a pleasure working with her and just the whole process of it coming out like this.
Thanks.
She has a new book coming out, by the way. We have a small press called Green Writers Press, and they're very green, you know, like recycled paper. And she has a book of her poems coming out in about a year.
Yeah.
And we will be glad to let you know when it comes. And then we may be doing another book,
Yeah.
a chat book or something.
Yeah, I pulled together some of the poems that I did with the Morse code, and there weren't really enough of them for a book. So I took some others that I call magnetos, which were from magnets that you put on the refrigerator. Each one has a word, and you play with them. And I made some poems. So the other side of the book, it's like this and then this. So it's code poems and magnetos, and I'm hoping to find a publisher for that too. I'll put it on the table so you can look at it. It's fun.
Nowadays, the political situation nowadays. Do you think still art can be helpful to overcome things or to...
I don't know what effect art will have out in the world, but it certainly helps me to express feelings about what's going on in the world. I would not say pessimistic, because I don't believe in optimism and pessimism. It's just when something socks you in the gut, you need to express it. I hope that somehow this kind of work and other artwork reaches people and they resonate.
Thank you.
Hi. First of all, I'm very admired to see you here. I have not known you before in your work, so I'm really interested. It's like the first time I see your work.
Wow.
And I would like to know what kind of tip or what advice would you give us art students, maybe especially female?
People ask very often, well, what does it mean? And I try to stay away from... I think my work has meaning at some deep level, but it isn't, you know, people who ask that question are trying to intellectualize. And so the tip that I would say is stay away from intellectualizing, experience something directly, express it if you want to. You know, it's a different kind of process than what they're asking about. I think we're too much up in our rational minds.
Stop doing art school.
Pardon?
Stop doing art school.
That's an incredible opportunity to open up, very much so.
But you're very good at articulating, so it's not you're not intellectualizing, but it's still good to talk about it.
Oh, sure.
And to define as you want to, and just articulating is still very valuable, even if you're not like trying to box it up in something.
And you're learning about other people's way of looking at things, and that's so valuable.
Sharing with other people.
Yeah.
And then you had another part of your question.
Well, it was mainly about the tip.
Just don't
But
get...
especially like for female, maybe like concerning art careers or about decisions, if you reflect a little bit. How did you not lose, after all, the faith in your art?
That's a hard one to answer, because it has a good many answers, I think, at different levels. believe in yourself is important. Like, don't let put downs from other people stop you from being who you are and doing what you must do. If I say try to be authentic, that's already going up into intellectualizing, but I mean, be real. Be as real as hot coffee in the morning, or breathing, or smelling a bad smell, or noticing four-leaf clovers. Just be open to what's there,
Small things,
and don't separate yourself from it. It's like each of us is part of what's going on and has value. And I think women are often taught that they don't have value, and that's bullshit.
Beautiful, thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming.
Oh, song, yes.
Do we have a song?
Anybody got an idea? Don't worry about it.
I can't sing.
That's
so.
okay, we'll help.
Ooh. Yeah, I shall try it. This is good. Daar was laatst een meisje los, dat wou gaan varen, dat wou gaan varen. Daar was laatst een meisje los, dat wou gaan varen als lichtmatroos. Zij moest klimmen in de mast, maken de touw, maken de zeilen. Hij moest klimmen in de mast, maken de zeilen met touwtjes vast.
Can someone send us a...
A song about going to sea, but of a girl who wants to go to sea and she is changing herself into a male.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I know somebody who did that. She went on a fishing boat off Alaska, and she had to be very careful because everybody else on the boat was male.
That reminds me of something you're just reading by Madeleine Kunin, the wonderful governor of Vermont. And she quoted Gloria Steinem saying, "We women are becoming the men that we thought we were going to marry." In other words, women have the power. They have the power. Look at this wonderful picture with all of her beautiful wrinkles. Amazing book. And we found out she's an artist too. She is the first woman governor of Vermont, our state. She's really a wonderful person. She's the same age as Nye, but a year younger, either way.
And after she was governor of Vermont, she did something else. After she was governor of Vermont for, I think it was either 3 or 4 terms, 6 or 8 years. Then she did something else, I forgot what. And then she was ambassador from the U.S. to Switzerland. And why was I starting to say that? After that was over, she went home and started to recruit people, young women, to get them trained so that they would go into politics and run for office. And that's really going very well now. It's nationwide now. I just love her face.
And her thoughts. And her thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. I was working in Child Protective Services, a social work position that I was not trained for, and I was very burned out. And one time she came to our town, and we heard that she would see anybody for 5 minutes. So I went to tell her about the difficulties of being in this state position and so forth. And I said, you know, I wrote you a letter. It's 4 pages long, but it got stuck in my printer. She said, well, when you get it out of the printer, send it. And I said, I will, but to whom should I address it? And she said, I want to read it. Send it to me. Wow. The governor of a state saying that, it was just amazing. And it was very real.
And that's one of the very interesting dynamics happening in our part of Vermont, in southern Vermont, in the last year, the activism of women getting involved. We have some of the most wonderful leadership in our town and the nearby towns, and some of the great art people running arts things are going into politics, and we're like, yes, yes, oh yay. And wonderful people. Sarah Coffey and Emily Kornheiser, some wonderful people who we know, I've worked with, we collaborated in arts and things. One of them runs Vermont Performance Lab, like showing new multidisciplinary arts involving dance and storytelling. She's running. And I'm like, yes, we need that in Vermont's government. So it's really...
Mike Mrowicki,
yes,
who has been in the legislature for many terms, many years. When I first knew him, he was 16 years old, and he was mowing the lawn for my in-laws. You know, he was just a kid growing up doing things like that, and then he got into working with the town for people who were homeless and so forth. And then he ran for the legislature, and he made it, and he's still there, and he's a very inspiring person. This is not a woman. We were talking about women in politics.
He's a musician. He has a wonderful singing voice with his partner. They have a duet, and we often hear them perform. He has a guitar, and they sing beautiful songs. Yeah. Also, while he's doing the legislature.
Yeah, and you know, small towns, you get to know these people, and it's wonderful. Thank you very much. I'm so honored. Thank you.